Mr. Robert Manchin, Managing Director of Gallup Europe, Mr. Paul Kazaka, Executive Director of LessMeansMore. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the AIP Foundation and my gratitude for your presence. AIP Foundation joins the Gallup and LessMeansMore in promoting this seminar, whose theme is Economic and Political Crisis, Perception and the Reality, because consider it very important. Everybody knows that economic and social crisis has had a manifold impact at all levels in Europe in the context of eroding trust in political and business leadership. Drastic austerity measures have been taken in most European member states. In Portugal, in the context of the commitments with troika, these impacts are multiple. In this context, it seems like a good time to take some distance and understand what the Portuguese citizen has gone through since the beginning of the crisis. What some of the expected and maybe less expected impacts were, and evaluate the options for a way out of the crisis. Today, we have the opportunity to understand it better, the impacts of the crisis, based on the world-renowned global research institute Gallup, in cooperation with the Brussels-based consultancy LessMeansMore. This study that Mr. Robert Manchin, Managing Director of Gallup, will present here is based on the World Pool data, which is a yearly survey conducted in more than 160 countries and covering a prospective sample of 98% of the world's adult population. The World Pool covers areas such as well-being, personal finance, safety and security, health, migration, good governance, confidence in leadership and in the economy, entrepreneurship, job creation, education, and global affairs. We will also have the opportunity to hear Mr. Kazaka, Executive Director of LessMeansMore, and we will also talk about the weaknesses of the euro and the economic and monetary union in the context of the current crisis, based on some studies that have been further on this matter. Thank you very much for your attention. Please. The floor is yours.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, apologize for 2 things. Speaking English, which is, it will be probably easier for you because my English is very bad, and so foreigners usually understand, maybe not the British. But the second, to take the, how to say, the courage to talk to you about Portugal. I have to say a few words why even if I feel uncomfortable about it, why I said maybe it makes sense. I was born in Hungary and lived in, let's call it, an authoritative regime, with constraining a lot of things which we take for granted by now. And as a young social scientist, we were fascinated by the changes in Portugal, because it looked like you are undergoing a transitions with all the pains that came from one system to another one. And despite the fact that what you see here is a lot of survey results from the last one is really literally 2 months old. We just finished it with my colleagues in the back there, who are partners from consumer. What we always noticed that there must be some deeper structural similarities. It's hard to say because no social scientist usually makes a connection. They make a connection between Mediterranean society, they are making the connections in the Iberian Peninsula, they make a lot of periphery versus center and so forth. But I couldn't stop being fascinated in the 1980s when we were looking at values differences and clusters of values. And the other one, which is a long series of surveys called Eurobarometer, where usually people are being asked not just political questions, but something a little bit beyond, like how is life, how satisfied are you with your life, and things like that. And it's always crisis here, crisis there, big changes in employment rates, big progress. The Portuguese mentality, if I may say so, at least as they are answering a questions like how are you, how satisfied are you with your life, is very similar to my own country, which is one of the most pessimistic in measurement. And even worse, when we were just saying that, well, crisis is here, but not in the weather. The sun is shining. 8 years ago, I did a larger study on perception of weather. Perception of weather is a good indicator whether I see the sun shining outside or not. And maybe I see, everybody agrees that there is sunshine, but when I'm asking back, please remember in the last 30 days, how many days out of the 30 you had at least 2 hours of sunshine one morning? Guess what? The same countries, the same societies, the Danes, the Scandinavians, were reporting on the average 5 more sunny days than according to the official meteorological institutes of the countries, which I bought the data from to compare them, were claiming that they had some sunny days. And my own Hungarians and your own Portuguese were systematically always missed 8 days of sunshine. Can you believe that? So I repeated it again. I was thinking it's a mistake. But no, it's not a mistake. The basic outlook is very similar to the outlook of the singers, which are last night, where Paolo was taking to me. I couldn't quite understood the text, but I knew if I would ask a survey question on how is life, he wouldn't say like the American, oh, wonderful. No, they would say about a little bit more melancholy, it's a little bit more. So what I'm trying to say is that beyond the economic crisis and beyond the immediate political attitudes, it was to look at what I would call the cultural capital, not in the sense of whether your father could teach you foreign languages and spend you the rest in their schools, but in the more massive scale of what is in the culture, how we are seeing things. And that's really, in a sense, a big challenge for any politician, anybody who is managing and trying to steer a society of how to create that needed energy which beyond the physical capital is needed in order to believe that A, there is a future, B, the future is better than today. 3, it was to work hard because the people around me are not corrupt, and it was my effort because I can go ahead. All the things which the Americans were so successfully teaching their kids from the beginning, which they even call learned optimism in a sense. And I think this is something which is common in the countries which are in crisis. Which, let me put it this way, the societies which has experienced the greatest shock from the so let me just briefly explain to you what you will see here in the next 35 minutes, 40 minutes. What did you say? This is for the background. As you mentioned, we are doing something which is a little bit crazy, that we started to say, how can it be that we don't have a reliable comparative information what ultimately counts, how people live, how they live their life, you have a lot of good surveys here and there, but not on the global scale in order to be comparable. So we started to do that with a methodology which is, for example, in Portugal, very early. One of the earliest countries in Europe where we couldn't reach the full Portuguese population over fixed line phones. Because even before the fixed line phone penetration reached total households in poorer areas and so forth, people switched to mobile phones. So what we are doing here, after a lot of experiments, in order to have reliable and quick data, we do random phone numbers. Random phone numbers means not from the phone books, because a lot of us are stopping our numbers to be listed in a phone book, and we want to reach everybody. So we do something what we call random digit dialing. And that means that we are about 60% of the people we reach over the mobile phone, 40% over the fixed line. I'm just giving you these numbers in order to understand what comes behind. And the way we are doing it in Africa, that we are looking at the latest official yearly demographic statistics, which is helping to know how the population is proportionally in the country. So the same proportion of people who live in Lisbon would be in our sample of 1,000. Same proportion who lives up in the north, in the various regions, or in the islands, we are sampling them as well, and then we are creating an average. But of course, as with every average, what's behind the average is also very important. So these are the numbers. And what I'm doing here is to try to pull 4 countries which had been lumped together by and then we can discuss maybe after of what was the criteria of by picking up, because the difference between Portugal and Spain might have been very different if a couple of months difference bailing out Italian bonds or Spanish bonds versus not buying Portuguese bonds, and it had a lot of difference, but that's taken aside. We have a base situation, what you see down here, which is 2008. Unfortunately, just in 2008, in Greece, we don't have the data yet. But what you see here is a question. Is the national economic conditions, the current situation, is good, excellent, poor? Putting in the 3. So few people say always about excellent that we pull together excellent and good. So what you see here, Ireland spring 2008. The date is important. So it was March 2008. They were feeling at the top of the world. They felt that the economy cannot be better, life is good. They can look down on the South in their past masters, having a larger per capita income than the British have, and we made it. And at the same time, look at Portugal. Portugal, even in 2008, that was not yet trickled down what the financial crisis meant for people's life. It was practically the baseline here, and then what you see in Spain, 1/3 of the Spanish felt things are good. And what you see there is yearly, well, I left out 2010, 11, just to fit everything here. But what you see here is a gradual decline of those who are saying that life is fair, only fair. Even that is disappearing in Portugal year by year by year. The baseline, as I told you, is maybe a cultural thing. But the perception and change on that, what you see is now. Ireland, however, is coming back, while Greece is going absolutely down. And this is, you will see it's slide after slide after slides. The good news, there could be worse than what Portuguese society is, and that's, just look at Greece. But Portugal is between Spain and Greece, in a sense. And the outlook, if you are looking ahead, whether it's improving or not, is again very similar how you are judging the present situation, that very few people see hope or see the end of the tunnel. That's the 10% of the Portuguese who believe that the situations are improving. In Ireland, it's already up to 1/3. And of course, while you have 1/10 of every 10th of Portuguese are saying that things are improving, it's only 3% in Greece who see that is happening. Now, this is a lot of plots maybe you cannot quite see, so let me explain a little bit. Because I wanted, Paulo asked me to put it in an even wider perspective than just the European ones. Okay, this is you have 160 or 140 countries, the individual dots. What you see right there, that the red is the Americas, blue, dark blue is Asia, green is Europe, yellow is the former Soviet Union countries, dark green is the Middle East, and then sub-Saharan Africa. So what you see here is green dots are European countries. We have two things here. The more you go from left to right, the larger proportion of people are saying that I believe that the economy is getting better. So it is about not their own personal optimism, it's in a sense a trust in the industrialists who would deliver something, the economy will be better. And then there is something very, very personal on the other side, where instead of asking them to evaluate things, or how satisfied you are, they are asking a concrete question. Yesterday, think about yesterday. Did you worry a lot about yesterday? That's a kind of emotional well-being of the state. And what you see here is Austria Germany being down here, the least amount, even there, you have people who are worrying about. That's, ask my wife, she always worries about why I'm not worrying at all. Part of it is psychological, individual things. Part of it, however, is based on societal concepts. So what you see up there is really a mix of red with greens, like Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Guatemala, but most of them not. A little bit of ex-Soviet Armenia, but even Armenia is in a slightly better position than Portugal. So the only things what you can compare to is more if you are comparing in the European context. And in the European context, what you see here, that a lot of countries which have no personal worries, but have worries about the economy as a whole, how they are doing. For example, Netherlands. Who would think that Netherlands is in this context? But the Dutch society, I don't know if you follow, is undergoing a tremendous from a most open society to a society which is worried about all kinds of things. What happens to us Dutch? We had been the good guys. We were doing everything according to the book. And now, look what happens to us. Look what happened to our national identity with all the migrants coming here. They very general societal level concerns, not necessarily individual ones. And then when you are looking at who are the ones who are the most pessimistic about the future of the economy, and at the same time worried a lot about in their personal life of yesterday. And that's when you have Portugal, Italy, Spain, Greece at the top left corner, at least in this summer. And sometimes the I stands for Ireland, sometimes they add in Italy to the picture. But what you see here, Ireland just moved out from that particular cluster of mental state by still believing that the economy will survive. They have a resilience going back to 50 years from crisis to crisis. I think that the Italians had more governments per year than any other European country. So it was when we are talking about Italian crisis, Italians are saying, oh, we just had 10 years of fantastic stable government. What do you mean? I'm joking, but you see what I'm saying. So in the psyche of the people, the resilience which builds up on historical experiences is a very important thing. And this will come back a little bit later, because what worries us based on the data, that how far this resilience can last. What is the breaking point of societies if you are too long in that particular thing? So that really erodes trust. We are talking about a lot about trust. But there are various social scientists like to call it social contract, something which is an underlying understanding. Like, we joined the European Union in order to be more safe in a larger unit. In exchange, they save us from certain things. Or I believe this party, if it gets to the government, he is promising he will provide jobs and solve this and that. And then, guess what? The governments cannot save and cannot solve certain things. And an excellent paper by, which I was just reading from Paulo, was really going saying, well, it's not just the trust in the national government, which is important, but even in the in a more larger scale, in the supranational, in how the global regulation of economy and financial sector can be trusted that they would save us from all the consequences, what destruction they can do. And that's behind a lot of the trust data what you see. People are, yes, they don't trust banks usually. Actually interesting, in Portugal, the trust in banks are relatively higher than in some other countries who are in big crisis, like in Spain or in Greece. But in most countries, the breach of trust means that people realize that they cannot use their old structures anymore of providing security and safety. And that brings to all kinds of directions. By the way, the Fundação Foundation in Lisbon funded a fascinating research series on old aftermath. And they are arguing that there could be good and bad consequences of that. Because people would realize that they have to provide more networked social movements and do something themselves instead of just making. So this is really what you see here, that in 2008, the trust in countries' leadership was highest in Spain among these groups of people, and now it is in Spain it's lowest, it's the same level than in Portugal, which went from 40 to 20, basically. Only every fifth person. Now, if excuse me for all the Kriegstracks here, but look at the red lines. The red lines are always talking about the relative level of trust of the given, in this case, the national government, how it changes. In Greece, you see it's going down all the way, while in Portugal it was quite high for some times and it went down. But the financial institution, this is something what I was referring. You still have, okay, not every, less than half of the people trust that, not over-emphasizing it, but compared to the 14% of the Greeks, or the 11% of Spanish, or even the 15% of the Irish didn't forgive their financial people, creating the mess that they did. They might see the government with a little bit better life of trying to negotiate what comes out of it, but not that. And then, talking about the businesses, this is really a big difference. In most of the Mediterranean countries, people see businesses as being very productive, including Portugal. There 9 out of 10 people, that's a lot. And it's only half of the Irish. I'm not saying that the Irish business is more clean than the Portuguese. All I am saying is the perception of the society, what it counts. Reality is one thing. We even have some kind of doubts how to measure reality. But what it counts is the calculation of the perception. And in that one, Portugal is even below Greece. Despite the fact that the Greeks already go back, they never had doubts about their business. And then something which I cannot quite comment or don't know enough about it, but military as an institution kept a very high regard. And in Portugal, it's even increasing. So, but look at Greece, who is also coming out from a very painful experience with their military. Again, I don't claim that you can predict anything based on this data, but it raises very important questions. How far our democratic institutional systems can be stable or can be resilient? And when is the point when the only remaining institutions who are still there would be the natural cry for, please help us to sort out the mess we are in. And it's just natural. It's always, if you look at history, it's always when people lost all the mechanisms of security or safety around them, is when they are looking for moral leadership or clean leadership for no matter what. Yes, democracy is nice, but right now I have to feed my kids. Who is promising me? So, what does this have as an effect on the European integration? And where the countries who are with this very derogative Anglo-Saxon abbreviation, putting together Portugal, Ireland, and Greece and Spain, and just economists or Financial Times just call them the PIGS countries. Now, one of the underlying assumptions is really what's going on in this governance level. Whom to blame for our situation? Who is doing that for us? And there is a lot of cloud, a lot of blah blah, but most people see as a kind of, and then we have economists who might tell us otherwise that I am wrong, but they just see this is a French-German bank saving action, where they are trying to refund and save their capital. Might be wrong, but this is a popular perception in a lot of countries that this is what's going on. And those of us who have lived long enough in a country with a press which had been less than free, learn that it's not the face validity of what you read in a text. You have to decode it, and it lets you read between the lines. And that's not a high pro or a highly educated intellectuals. Everybody else is saying, oh, they say there is no crisis anymore. That means I have to go and buy food because there will be more crisis. I mean, that's very different from Anglo-Saxon experience of the countries who have lived in that type of thing. And because of that, you have a narratives which are being developed all the time. And that's again a very fertile ground to new social political movements, to new social political parties, where people feel that, well, these guys are just employees of Goldman Sachs. These guys really had been put in place by an invisible hand of the global politics. And all the efforts which are going contrary to that has to fight that kind of narrative if they want to keep the existing framework. And I would say that when we are talking to people and listen to the stories behind the answers. There are narratives. Simple people are saying, well, that might have been, why do you need Europe? Because, look, we had 50 years of peace. Good. Try to tell that to my kids. I say, what are you talking about? Do you really think that the French and the Germans should each other? It's unimaginable to have the same kind of narratives which kept Europe for our generation alive, saying this is a value community of like-minded, peaceful people who after centuries of fighting now live peacefully and solidarity and helping out each other. That is really what is happening, is destroying that foundational narrative, that foundational myth, that foundational reason of why you want to have that. So we have to find, people are struggling to find different things, and this is really what you can see here in Portugal, for example, which in 2009, when it seemed like they need European Union, it was 46% of the Portuguese said that you need the EU approval. Do you approve or not the leadership of Europe? And then it went down to around 30%. In Ireland, it was up in 70%, went down to Greece, 60%. I mean, that was still the year when the Greeks understood the European Union as a money transfer machine, to be blunt, where you had a middle class who were able to have stable jobs in government, public administration related things, which had been sustaining and catching up with the rest of it. Bitter disappointed. And in Spain it always also went from 16 to 30. Now, this is, I work in Brussels, so I really see that people are genuinely worried about these trends, because that means practically half of the underlying general sentiment. I'm not saying this is voting intention, I'm not saying anything else, but I'm saying that if you try to think that the EU project had always, on the average, about 50-55%, maximum 60% approval, and the sizable people who had their doubts, that core basis who had been going along with the project had been halved, more or less in every society. And that will have some consequences, of course, because politicians are politicians in order to feel what's the mood out there, and they are torn between doing what is they believe is good for the future versus what is good for their immediate future. And that needs compromises, and that needs new expressions. And I think less than the often mentioned radical parties, what is the real danger for this European project, more the emptying out of the middle, what is happening. So a basic agreement between the center right and the center left in most societies, that no matter what, we have to pull together, because Europe is in the global competition, our countries couldn't survive alone, we have to do something in order to, and we have to bring along our population and educate them and so forth. But that's very hard to do when you cannot provide rest in your population. And that is really creative. And in that one, what you see is suddenly Germany becoming the symbol of a lot of things. So instead of what used to be the French idea that let's incorporate Germany into the structures in order to control them, now they are inside, and you have not Germany in Europe, but a German Europe in a sense, where the conditions, where it's not good or bad. What I'm saying is the same thing, the German value system, how they perceive the morals, and how they interpret the narratives. That's the narrative which they are stubbornly insisting. Look at the banking union. Discussion on how far Portuguese, Italian, Spanish, whatever banks should be bailed in, as they say. Who is paying for that? And again, something about excellent exposition in this study. But where is the backstop? Who is the ultimate guarantee that a big bank fails, then somebody is paying for it? Of course, the banking sector is saying, well, it should be the public. Good. The Germans are now united in the new forming coalition agreement. Both the Social Democrats and the CDU agrees that no matter what the rest of Europe think about us, we do what is right, which means we are telling them that they should pay, not us. And that is creating a big friction, a big tension within Europe around the role of Germany and how they see it and what they have. It will be, again, just looking at the external balance sheets or the banking regulation, legal language and so forth, not solve the problem. At the end of the day, the experience of the people will have its impact. That's and that is really how they are evaluating their own situation. You know much better that Portugal was very successful, reaching a very high level of activity. That meant, even compared to other countries, Greece, or even Spain or Ireland, it had consistently been able to provide jobs and to include a larger proportion of the people than the other countries. And at the end of the day, that counts, because it gives a meaning to your life, it provides a basic security, and so forth. This is why the shock of unemployment is so high. Don't forget that the unemployment numbers, in my mind, looks like very precise numbers, but they are a little bit of politically motivated calculations. What I mean by that the International Labour Organization definition of unemployment, which had been accepted by everybody, and this is what has been reported, is referring only those who are in the pool, so to speak. Those who are left outside of the activity rates are not counted in the unemployment rates. So if the unemployment rate is declining, then it's a double yummy, because the unemployment rate goes up within the sector already in the labor market, and the labor market is shrinking itself. And this is really going on. I'm going a little bit faster, I'm sorry, because I see that I provide too many numbers here to be able to digest. But I just wanted to show here, putting together two things. On the one hand, pulling the IMF data and something what we call in our own world poll as a job climate index, and where people who have jobs, how they evaluate their jobs. Let me step back for a moment. I said before that jobs, no matter if you are Marxist or not Marxist, jobs are creating values and it gives meaning for the people. It gives a purpose, why to get up in the morning. I do something which is meaningful. And this is why it has devastating psychological consequences when you are out of jobs. But not all jobs are created equal. Some jobs are creating for you as much negative emotions as much better well-being than good ones. I mean, just think about if you happen to have in your career a terrible loss, how you felt in the moments going into the workplace and wished you are not there. Look at, I don't have time to share with you the daily measure of well-being or happiness or evaluating your life. The Blue Monday is an expression which usually drops the highest after being with your family and friends for a weekend, which gave you something in compensation what you have to endure in a job. Engagement in job is probably the single largest resource a country can have in order to provide well-being, in order to provide energy, engagement in terms of giving. You don't have to exploit people, people are exploiting themselves. Okay? So it really, if you enjoy your job, if you love what you are doing, if your boss is recognizing you for who you are, helping you to develop, that's really a very different climate. And this is, I think, crisis here, crisis there, can happen. Unfortunately, what we see that the blue ones is a psychological measure of the climate in your job. And most of it, of course, driven by insecurity in the job, by thinking that, okay, I might have a job now, but looking around, so many people are losing theirs, I don't know if I will have that. But not only that, it has elements which are related to the quality of work life, how you are being managed by others, how you see that. And this is really, in that respect, I'm saying that some other countries are. Now, going back to the first slide, if you remember, I had a word up there, which was the resilience of the Portuguese society. I don't know if it makes sense or not, but what I see here, that a lot of people, when they are, it's not like the Greeks, who are, very few of them are saying that I am satisfied with my life. What it is. It's not about whether I have a lot or not. And I don't know, and hope that Paulo will explain a little bit what less means more. Stands for. But I think this is less means more. That the satisfaction is coming from two things. And there is a long tradition, not only in Christianity, but in Buddhism, in every place, that satisfaction, happiness, is not just external, it's internal as well. How do you cope what you have? Do you have the mechanism to be satisfied? Remember, Christ said something like, look at the birds. They don't worry, somebody will take care of them. But that needs trust as well. This is why. But the Portuguese have, what you see, is fairly stable, almost like a cultural trait, a cultural feature, if you like, which are not reacting to the external changes the same way as in Greece it does. Again, I don't have explanation. It might be very interesting to do some deeper research and more things on that one. Well, so we have looked at that, and of course we have the male-female differences in most societies, not in Portugal, mind you, and probably because, I don't know, but the structure of the employment is probably such that they are not, but in others, yes. The worst figures are, of course, if you are looking at the age, because this is about future. It's about a missing generation which would have consequences for 10, 20, 30 years, not just now. because if you don't start your life right, it's very hard to catch up later on. And these figures are a shame for anything what we stand for. It's very hard to argue if you let numbers like that happen, that the whole integrative framework is working or there's something which is there. So, again, looking at the Eurostat numbers of the real wages, you see the drop in gross wages and salaries. That's 2008, the end of 2012. And that is, you see the parallel line on experiential well-being. Yes, for a large proportion of the Portuguese society, real wages are such that it still counts to be able to buy the basic necessities. We were trying to look at a little bit of regional differences, but remember our data is only 1,000 a year, so it's very hard to have reliable numbers down to the regional level. But I think it would be very interesting and educational if we would try to look at not only at the Portuguese society as a whole, but try to see what are the regional differences. There is a way how we are measuring evaluated well-being, and that is we are asking people to imagine yourself in a ladder where 0 is the worst possible life and 10 is the best possible life you can imagine. And then we are asking them to please put yourself on that ladder where you feel you are right now. So it's really, it's not the absolute measure, but each person's mental imagination of what could be the best life for me, I am closer to that one, or I am closer to the worst possible life that I can imagine. And what you see here, that on the average, the Greeks had been up in 42, which is around a little bit below the middle, when the Portuguese were already in 2009 down to 2.8 out of this 10-point scale. And then they remain there. The Irish, which I told you, started out very high, and it's a very divided. But just to go back a little bit, what is common in these societies that a very large number of people are saying that, okay, maybe the state cannot provide for us, but we have a social support, we have a family to rely on. And that is a good indication of the social capital which are present in society. And what you see there, the worrying trend in Greece, that is not happening in Portugal. In Portugal, it's still around 85% of the people are saying that I have somebody to rely on. By the way, that means, on the contrary, that every 6 Portuguese are so lonely that they are saying I have nobody to rely on. So it's not so, think of this way, it's not that the absence of loneliness, if you like. And what is happening in Greece, that this social network is disappearing because the families cannot help each other anymore. And that is what is interesting, that what we see that in Portugal, the volunteering is picking up as the effect of the crisis. So more people, in the last 3 years, every year more than before, was saying that I give some time to work with others, to work for others. So there is some strong basic, and this is jumped up as a response in Greece as well. So people are thinking. Is religion helping people in this crisis? And what you see here is interesting that Greece have the highest level of having the religion and importance in their life. The ultimate backstop, right? So it's really, if you cannot trust anybody else, God is still there to help you. And the Spanish division is still there. It's very much divided between those who are saying yes and those who are saying no. And in this respect, the Portuguese has about a 2/3, 1/3 divide in this. It's a simple question. I'm not saying about how many times you go to church and things like that, but whether for your life, personal life, religion has a meaning and helps you to process what's happening there. Now, this is not a happy picture, and that is about intentions to migrate. Intentions to migrate can mean a lot of things. Of course, in an imaginary world, if I could live in the Bahamas, maybe I would say yes. But when I am asking that, do you have any concrete plans in the next 12 months? Do you think in the next 12 months you would move, actually? Then out of those who are around 1/4 of the Portuguese, every fourth person is saying that I am constantly thinking about moving somewhere else. And we know, I don't have the breakdown here, but we know that after 45, people are realistic and don't even dream about it. Or some of them do. I'm exaggerating, but it's mostly below 35 where most of these numbers are so it's much higher. But within that, what the big difference is, because you see that maybe Ireland, which always had a much more pool of social networks or family networks in the US, in Canada, elsewhere, British-speaking countries, had that one. Greeks also traditionally had large networks there, but the Portuguese have the highest proportion within that who are actually saying that in the next year I will do something. Enough. And so we don't have final figures. So it's not about the border statistics. It's about what people are planning and what people are trying to do. And of course, within that, Brazil is the most preferred country. While the Greeks are dreaming about Australia and Germany and the US, and Spain is Ireland, of course, Australia, US, Canada. Australia is becoming a big market right now, because that's really where the action is. And we have looked at a number of things on what are the components of the well-being. And we came down with an interesting list, but there is a lot of research behind that around the globe. And we are saying that, first of all, you have to live well in the place where you are. Even within Portugal, you have hotspots that are better than others. So, city or the place of living is something which can drive well-being better than on a national program. Loyalty to that place. And this is what we have found that the city of area where you live is a perfect place for you, yes or no? Your friends and family give you positive energy every day. You have a strong social support. Someone in your life always encourages you to be healthy. We all know that smoking is not good for us, but But if I have a supporting health network that has preventive things, this is something missing. I see. You like what you do every day. In the last 7 days, you have felt active and productive every day. You learn or do something interesting every day. Your physical health is near perfect. Health is the second most important component of well-being. In the last 7 days, you have worried about money. Now, of course, that's the absence of that worry about money all at once. And here, you see that the three countries almost literally the same. 1/3 of them are in that level of poverty that they constantly have to worry about money for the survival. In Greece, that's a double, which is quarter. When I am asking about whether your life in 5 years from now will be better than today, remember the same ladder what I said, put yourself on a scale of 0 to 10, where you are today, and then we ask the same thing, where you will be 5 years from now. And what we are seeing here, the proportion of people who put themselves higher 5 years from now than today. And then what we looked at age breakdown in Portugal. This is those who are 60 and over. Very low proportion of them over the years. It's stable. It's age related probably. And it's really only the youngest, below 30, who say it can be only better than today. And then not much difference in terms of money or education. And finally, to put together, where is, in all these aspects, where is Portugal among all the OECD countries? We are working with my colleague Aurelian is here, with OECD on developing something what we call the Better Life Index, where we are using the Gallup data, but you have seen some of them, and OECD is looking the hard statistical collective information together, and then looking at various domains of life, and it's the highest to the lowest. And what you see there, that in terms of income, in terms of community, in terms of civic engagement, in terms of educational achievement, in terms of life satisfaction, is almost the last one of all of the OECD countries. And so it's just a kind of visual image of in the various domains where Portuguese fits into this family of OECD developed economies. I think that I would stop here. I have I'm going back, but that's enough for digest. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's time for you.
Muito bom dia a todas e a todos. Peço a indulgência dos meus compatriotas porque vão ter que me ouvir noutra língua que não a nossa. To those of you who are not my compatriots, I also have to ask for your indulgence for my possible mistakes in the domain of the English language, which is not my native language. Her Excellency Outi Holopainen, Ambassador of Finland, Her Excellency Anne Webster, Ambassador of Ireland, His Excellency Ove Torsheim, Ambassador of Norway, distinguished representatives of the diplomatic corps of the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, Tunisia, and I beg your pardon if I missed some of you, distinguished representatives of military authorities, representative of the Portuguese Communist Party, I would like very much to thank your presence. I would also like to note those who sent their apologies, namely the parties that are within the government in Portugal, os Verdes as well, and the Bloc de Esquerda. I appreciate their apologies. I would like to also thank all my dearest friends. Some of them I was not seeing in decades, as José Mateus here in front of me. It's really a pleasure. Some others I've been seeing more recently, like my dear friend Miguel Nicoleta Correia. My deepest thanks to Fundação AIP for this cooperation, and most in particular Director André Negrinho, that made this possible and that received us in this magnificent house. Many thanks and congratulations to Gallup. I think that all of us will learn a lot. I always learn a lot when I listen to you, Robert. And let me also mention in particular somebody that is in the back row, Aurélien. It was his idea, Aurélien Renard from Gallup, and his reasoning should not be very difficult to understand, as we did work together in Nepal, in Bangladesh, like we say, with much more optimistic views than what we have seen here in Portugal. I have to underline. But if we did it in Bangladesh and Nepal, if we have been working in so strange places, well, why not look at this country of yours that is going through these major crises? And then I thought a little about it, and I accepted the challenge, and so here it is, our cooperation. A word on less means more. Well, less means more means local, not local, land and energy, sustainable systems, less, and then I added less means more. It was supposed to be only a consultancy focused on sustainable development, and less means more in terms of energy. That is, the less energy you use, the more you should take out of it. It does not at all apply to any sort of austerity philosophy, so it does not have economic underlinings, because Less Means More was created exactly for sustainable development. That's where I focused on in 2010, and that's where, for those of you who follow the issue of ISO 26000 and social responsibility, a lot of things that were very fascinating to me at that time, but that did not work out as well as did others more far away, like the South Asian ones. Thank you very much to those of you who are here helping me within associations where I am working as well. Nerea, that has co-authored a report on the euro with me. Ekaterina Chirkova, who is my head in South Asia Democratic Forum, and that accepted to come here. Thank you very much. And my always companion from a very long time, Hugo Almeida, is now established here in Lisbon, so it's easier for him to work with us. I always remember the times when he managed to put us from Iraq to the main floor of the European Parliament. It was some years ago. Technology was not so advanced, and you always do a fantastic job. We are now being broadcasted in the wide web through my site, LessMeansMore, and now we do it in a routine basis. But 6 years ago, it was not so obvious as it is nowadays, and if it was not for Hugo, we would not be able to do it. So, all of you, thank you so much. And my comment on Robert's magnificent presentation, I think, could be said in an expression, in a very simple expression. Well, we sensed that this crisis was deep, but perhaps not all of us understood how deep it is. It is much more than an economic crisis. It is a complete social and political crisis. The trust has gone. We can say, there is worse than Portugal. There is, as a matter of fact, the proof was there. Greece, for instance, shows in most of the indicators a worse behavior and a worse state of mind than Portugal. But Portugal is really very bleak. And if I would have known, I just joked about it yesterday with Robert, if I would have known the full data when we thought about the conference, perhaps instead of inviting the political parties, we should invite religious confessions, because apparently that's where the market is. I don't see much optimism for political organizations, because I think that the lack of trust is tremendous. I think that the cynicism of the Portuguese people is, absolutely alarming. And it will be a very, very difficult task for rebuilding what we have in front of us. Well, I start this comment. Let me see how do I? Yeah, it is. This comment, with something that, as Robert was saying, is European, but actually, people tend to think of Europe as tend to present Europe as something that would not have to do with us. This always confuses me a lot, because what is Europe? We are Europe. Europe is not a set of distinguished representatives, and I know that a lot of distinguished people are gathered in some rooms in Brussels or elsewhere and take decisions. This is not Europe. I'm very sorry. We are Europe, nobody else. And so, what does Europe say? Well, Europe says this in a very clear way in all the polls that have been done. That Europe, Eurozone year, not really the EU 27 or 28, the Eurozone thinks, and has been thinking steadily in the last few years, that the euro is the most important symbol of Europe. Most important, more than the political democratic system, more than the freedom of circulation, more than whatever else you might think. So it is really the most important symbolic and real mechanism as seen by the Europeans. At the same time, they have been saying, regarding unemployment, that this is the most important issue, more than all the others you can think of, and all the questions are listed, and they always go to the issue of unemployment or employment. And I would like to stress that this is particularly the case in Portugal. Portugal is perhaps the champion country where people say in absolutely massive terms, our issue is employment. Okay, so you would gather from this, Europe therefore is focused on employment. I mean, it should be so obvious that no question should be asked, because what I'm showing here is something that all European leaders knows very well. It comes in the Eurobarometers, it comes in growth, and so you say, well, of course. So this is what European leaders are trying to do. No. I mean, the most important characteristic of the euro is exactly that it scraps employment as an objective of the monetary policy. Nobody else did it. Not the United States, not Canada, not Japan, not the United Kingdom, not to my knowledge. No other, for instance, I do not know how it works in Norway, but I doubt that the central bank of any developed Western country would have done a thing like that, to scrap employment as the main, together with stability of prices, the main objective of the monetary policy. But the euro did it. The euro did it, and in the past 5 years, when it was so obvious to the population, to the economists, to the public opinion, to whoever else that the problem we are facing is not a problem of price stability. The problem we are facing is a problem of employment. Well, we saw 2 new treaties on economic and monetary policy, 2 new intergovernmental treaties, a reform of the Euro Treaty. Did it touch employment? No, quite on the contrary. And we can demonstrate this. The treaties that were done and passed by the European leaders, and here I would like to stress that the European Parliament agreed with them, and the European Parliament, following the Lisbon Treaty, has the right of initiative. The European Parliament could have had the initiative to, I wouldn't say only could, but it was its obvious duty of presenting a process to reform the euro where employment would be at the heart of the monetary policy. It didn't. It did not. It didn't approve what has been done that has been very detrimental to the employment in Europe. And here I would like to stress some of the data and some of the calculations that were actually done by Nerea Artamendi, that is sitting here, on comparing the effects of monetary policy in the last 5 years in these countries, in Japan, the United Kingdom, the United States, and Europe. And it is clear that Europe has been the Europe of the euro. The Eurozone has been the one who has done the less in terms of monetary policy. And everything indicates that the fact we have a much higher unemployment rate is in direct relation with, when I said we, I mean the Eurozone. I'm not speaking about Portugal, I'm speaking about the Eurozone. The Eurozone has a much higher unemployment rate, and it is, everything indicates that this is in direct relation with this feature of our monetary policy. And of course, this is why I thought, I've been saying that for, for 3, 4, 5 years. I have been contributing to BBC on a regular basis, more or less regular, on economic affairs. I have been producing texts in several French blogs saying this and repeating this, but so it's something that is not coming out of my mind right now. I've been thinking about it for a very long time, and I've been absolutely puzzled. How is it possible that nobody is doing this? It's amazing, because it is the democratic deficit of the functioning of Europe that it shows is absolutely unbelievable. It's nothing, we have never seen nothing like that before. These European institutions could not care less with what the European people think. It's as simple as that. There is no other way of getting to these points. Okay, well, but now let's go into the issue of the euro and the why it was in crisis, the reforms that were made, and so on and so on. And I would like to, these are issues I developed more. Oh, I've got 1, 2 more. I don't know how to get back that road. Sorry. Oh, that was no 2. No, back there you are going ahead. Yeah. Well, perhaps I will just go ahead, and then I will go ahead sufficiently. I will get back to the number 1. Well, no problem. Go to it again, and then we will get to the. Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you, Andre. That's that. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's this one. No, it should be. Yeah, that's the one. Okay. Well, everybody is still saying that, well, the problem of the euro was excessive public deficits. Well, but this is such a nonsense to say something like that. Well, actually, political establishment is saying this, because I really would just advise you, read the Financial Times. The Financial Times, I mean, year after year, and namely Martin Wolf, who, by the way, he's a German citizen, but he is the chief economist of the Financial Times. He has been saying this, repeating all the time, this is nonsense. Of course it's not a public deficit. But he's saying that I actually will also invite you to get an economics manual. I mean, why is there might be a crisis in the currency? Why should it be? Of course it is because of external accounts. It always was the case. Why should it be different? But I am starting by Germany because, why was the euro so stable up to 2000 something? Well, this was because of the German deficits. Because Germany during the 90s had to go with the reunification process. It spent, colossal amounts of money that was really public, but due to the accounting creativity and accounting negotiation that was done back from the accounting system that we are using, was just not showing up. There is the best way we have to detect, a deficit, or situations of deficit, or sometimes surplus that do not show up as they should, is to compare it with the stock concept, that is the debt in this case. I mean, it's a stock and flow. For those of you who are not economists, it's very simple. I mean, if you have a glass of water, the flows of water into the glass, I mean, you put 2 drops, you take 1 drop, you put 3 drops, in the end, it must, added together, it must be exactly what is there in terms of water. I mean, if it's not there, well, something is wrong. It's called the black holes. The most famous black hole is the United States black hole on the external accounts. If ever the deficit, external trade, not only trade, but external accounts, if ever the American external accounts would give correct figures, I mean, the United States would be worse than Portugal a long time ago. It would be more than bankrupted. But you go to the stock figures, and you see a completely different figure. Things do not add up. Of course, that water might evaporate. I might drink it. I will. But and of course, the same can happen with debt. I mean, the valuation might differ. I mean, your stock, your credits might evaluate for whatever reason, and your debt might be devaluated or revaluated or whatever. But the thing is that this is simply not possible. You cannot get there understanding the situation this way. And in terms of Germany, well, it's very simple. I mean, there was 1 year where the calculations were roughly correctly done, which was 95, where the deficit was 9.5, minus 9.5. And actually, as the statistical authority then said, it was an underestimation. According to the statistical office, the real deficit was over 10%. Okay, but then what happened? Well, you have, for instance, some of the things are known, but to my knowledge, there is not a systematic study that has been done. Treuhand, for instance, was considered as a private company, so its enormous public deficit was not counted as a public deficit. It was counted like a deficit of a company. And what happens if you look at the long-term projections of the German figures, you see a German debt that can never correspond to the deficit. It's much higher than what would happen if the correct deficits were the ones that were presented as such. Well, the case in Portugal is perhaps even more serious. Of course, it is much more serious than the one in Germany, because when Germany did it, actually Germany saved Europe in short term, because This German deficit allowed the euro to be a stable country within. Of course, it was devaluating up to 2002, 2003, exactly because of this, because of the lack of muscle of the external accounts of the eurozone, that to a large extent depended on Germany. Germany had to massively put its resources on the reunification process, and so it's external. That's what you can see in the next one. Yeah, exactly. That's what you can see in the well, you could see in this one and in the next one. Here you can see that the deficit in the beginning of the surplus. I mean, Germany has been always a surplus external trade country, external accounts country. And this was the reason why that episodically you always had a revaluation of the Deutschmark and the devaluation of the French franc and not to mention the Portuguese escudo. By the way, the Portuguese escudo in 20 years, from 73 to 95, roughly 20 years, it went from under 10 escudos for a Deutschmark to 102 escudos for that Deutschmark. So 20 years, you see what it means, you know. And of course, this was the reflex of the external, of course, not of the public. I mean, the equation everyone has to keep in mind is that external accounts equals public plus private accounts. It's very simple. So when the Maastricht Treaty said, well, only public accounts are important, the rest you can forget about it. What does it mean? It means, well, forget about private accounts. And what are private accounts? The accounts of every family and companies and so forth. And how do they translate normally? Not necessarily like that, but most of the time, how do they translate normally in international relations? Through banking financial flows. So basically what Maastricht said was, well, private accounts, there is an invisible hand that will take care of them. Don't worry, be happy. Whatever your indebtedness level will be, the market will sort out the issue. But the public, no, that's Leviathan. It's a terrible monster that you have to keep in control. And so you cannot allow it to develop. And if you do that, you will have some accounts. And of course, this was not at all the case. What happened? You see, this is still, this is, in particular, the German reality. You see, it came from a situation of deficit from 91 to 95 in external accounts to an explosive superávit after 2000. This is due to a lot of things. The end of the most important reunification effort. The Agenda 2010 was absolutely fundamental to these results. I mean, Germany became much more competitive than its neighbors, not to speak about the periphery. Then the difference is so amazing that the recipe for the explosion of the currency was quite obvious for a long time, since 2000. If you look more in detail to the next figures, you will see that the public accounts do not show the same. These are only 4 countries: Spain, Portugal, France, and Germany. You can't see in the public accounts the prediction of the crisis we will have, but if you look at the external accounts, it's very obvious. It's there. It's there. The way that Germany is going and Portugal and Spain are going, and with France, it's not it's not completely reassuring. Of course, it's nothing compared with Portugal and Spain, but still one has to be very cautious on the future in France. But it's obvious. This is the reason why the euro crisis. Of course, that this developed. Why? Because the freedom of flow of capital was complete, because the invisible hand would sort this out. This is nonsense, of course. It's absolutely nonsense. Nobody could seriously believe in it. And of course, it did not happen that way. What happened was, here I just make a presentation on the issue of the external accounts issue. I mean, this equation is the most obvious and simple and fundamental. I learned that long time ago in economics when I studied here in Lisbon. This is, I mean, if you don't see that, you see nothing. And what is Maastricht Treaty? The Maastricht Treaty, you just look at it. You have some articles that are pure poetry, if you want. They are useless. They say, well, we would like things to go better, growth and employment and whatever. And then you have precise limits and penalties and clauses on public accounts. These are absolutely, very, very tough and very serious. Here, there's a way of seeing, the increasing gap of external accounts between those countries. Latvia, for instance, was the country. I mean, actually, it suffered much more than Greece in economic terms. Latvia was the biggest crisis. Of course, I included here the Baltic states, although they are not part of the euro, because they pegged their currencies a long time ago. Now they are starting to be, but they were not at this time. And in practical terms, they were like being in the eurozone, but as they were not formally, they were the most fragile part of the system. They were the first currencies to be attacked in the crisis in 2008, where exactly the Latvian was the most important case, but Estonia as well, and Lithuania as well. And there you, so this is the reason why the crisis is here. And so my issue is very simple. Either one says what the economic theory says, what the commentators and analysts of economists say, which is look at the external accounts. Do not look only at the public accounts, or the crises like the one we just lived are absolutely certain to repeat themselves. Absolutely certain. There is no way we can avoid it. Now I get into the issue of the Dutch black hole. We are really getting, I am also speaking a bit too much, so I'm not. Well, the Dutch black hole is really a very interesting issue because the Netherlands are supposed to be, they have the biggest surplus in Europe, actually in relative terms bigger than the German one, and still this does not show up in the stock. They should have, they should be now the creditors of the world, because after having decades of so big external surpluses, they should be the creditors of the world. They are not. Quite on the contrary. How is it? Well, this is only a possibility that I am advancing, but I am pretty certain it is because of the fiscal incentives you have to locate yourself in the Netherlands. That is, if a Portuguese company says that it is based in the Netherlands, and if it says that its brand is the cause of most of its profits, well, then its profits are registered here in the accounts as a revenue from a factor of production, so they will be accounted in the Netherlands. Most likely they will do it for optimizing their tax bill, that is, pay as less taxes as possible. And of course that these companies that do that certainly will not have any reason why to keep the money in the Netherlands. Most likely it's only an artificial scriptural operation, and in real terms the money never got to the Netherlands in the first place. And so it disappears from there because This was not the intention to move the money to the Netherlands. And I'm convinced this is the cause. But I was very surprised to see that the academic research I could see was saying things like, "Oh, it should be because of the devaluation of the investments made by the Dutch investors," which is completely absurd. I mean, why should the Dutch be less intelligent and less perceptive of the value than the Germans or the British or anybody else? Why should their investments devaluate in such a way? And of course, there is no reason why for this. This is certainly not the answer. The answer will be found out, I think, when the fiscal impact will be studied. And this is exactly the same thing with the United States. Actually, the only country that, to my knowledge, has a lot of studies on the fiscal reasons why for black holes is China. In China, you have lots of public. You go to the Google, you go to the transparency, tax transparency organizations, and you see a lot of studies on China. But I am convinced that China is certainly not an exception. It is the rule. Either we tackle this issue of tax harmonization. Of course, when I speak about tax harmonization, I can imagine that especially our dear Irish friends would be very nervous. But there must be some sort of deal and agreement on taxing capital. If there is not, monetary union will not be possible. I am absolutely convinced, and that's why that's one of the major arguments I am developing there. So, well, coordination. Of course, we need coordination. And we need more, but I would say more intelligent coordination than the one we have. I mean, we do not need bureaucrats to analyze our budget 3 times a year, as it is the current situation in Brussels. And we do not need some bureaucrat to tell us in Portugal that your constitutional court should shut up. This is an internal business of Portugal, and I do understand and I do share the impression and the point of view of those who say this is absolutely unacceptable to see our constitutional court to be treated that way. Because there are others, as we know. Well, I have I think that they have been doing some of their work has been really outstanding. The Karlsruhe Constitutional Court. So I obviously praise a lot what they do, but I cannot understand that a measure from the European Central Bank that is actually a management measure announced over a year ago by the European Central Bank is blocked because the Karlsruhe Court is thinking on it, and people say it's very normal. But if Portuguese Constitutional Court say, well, we do not approve with these budgetary measures, this is absolutely impossible to accept. I cannot accept this logic. I am a federalist, a European federalist. I do believe in Europe. I do not need to get lessons from no bureaucrat on Europeanness. As I usually said, Europe runs in my veins because I hitchhiked when I'm from 14 years old, wherever in Europe, from the North Cape to Palermo, to across Ireland, the United Kingdom, you name it. All the Western Europe, I know. Well, Norway is really the country I know the best. Hitchhiking. And Norway and Europe runs in my veins. Europe is not a construction of bureaucrats. Europe is every one of us. Is all of the hundreds of thousands of Portuguese that have been migrating. And this is the Europe we have to respect. And this is the Europe I do not see respected. And sorry for getting a bit out of the agenda, but I think this is a fundamental issue. I really think that we must make reform of the euro, basically to impose these very important principles. And I think this should be on the center of the agenda of the debate for the next European elections. I do not understand that it is not. I do not understand that the major, I do understand some of the political forces within the European Parliament that are Eurosceptic and have been always against the euro, for instance, and they have been coherent, and I have nothing to criticize them in the way, in that coherence. I disagree. I am absolutely European as one can be. So I am very much in favor of the euro. I disagree, but I do respect those who have a different approach. But I do not understand those who claim to be pro-European but think that Europe is something that can be dictated against the Europeans. There is no Europe that can be made against the European people. It can only be built on the basis of the European democratic will, and this I am very much convinced of. Thank you very much, and sorry for the time.
Now I guess it is time to open the debate. Before that, let me just thank you very much for your excellent presentation. I guess that you had a lot of questions. I myself, I have to leave at 12 o'clock, so I keep everything from the upstairs, but I'm glad to be here. If you agree, I will pass the word to the audience. And please, questions. Someone over there.
There's no microphone.
Okay, no microphone. So,
could you present yourself?
Yes, my name is Francesco Franco. I'm an Italian PI. I teach here at the Nova Business School of Economics. I wanted to give a general comment to your presentation. I think it will be time to shift from this narrative approach to a more conversational one, because narrative tends to dramatize a lot. Let me give you an example. I think you build on a fair point, which is the confusion between government and national debt. This is an objective point, and it's national debt that matters. But for the rest of your conversation, your narrative, not the conversation, I think you missed objectivity in the rest of the conversation. Regarding mandates of central banks, actually maybe only the US has an employment mandate. Canada does not have a mandate. New Zealand doesn't have a mandate. In Europe, we shifted from those type of mandates a long time ago. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it is a fact. Even the UK doesn't have an employment mandate. No. You have in the mandate, if you read the mandate, something that says you might fine-tune the economy, but principal mandates are typically inflation targeting mandates for the last 15 years. Then the German reunification. Well, certainly there was a fiscal expansion shock, but it was coupled with a monetary restrictive shock, very strong. So you cannot just miss that part of the analysis, which is what created the problems, for instance, in my country. The valuation effects are objective. It's not that they are fictional. If you have your debt in dollars and the dollar depreciate or appreciate, it changes. So it's not that the international investment position of the US is the accumulation of the current account. It's what it's worth. The debt is in dollars. Yes, the debt is in dollars. The dollars changes value. It's of course. Think about the Netherlands poll you were saying. Imagine you have a Portuguese company is worth €9 on the stock market per stock, and it's part of the investment position in the Netherlands, and then it's worth 90 cents. That was not a Dutch that was doing a bad investment. It was just people that placed the company there that now are worth 10 times less, but still it appears in the valuation effect. It's worth 90 cents and not $90 or €9. On German competitiveness, well, the German did a lot of structural reform, which Schroeder in 2003 they really did, a medium-term, long-term structural reform agenda, which at the end what matters for competitiveness. And Well, but I think poetry is still useful.
Sorry?
Poetry can be still useful. On the first presentation, I thought there was a lot of insight, but I spoke too much.
Thank you so much for your comments. Starting by the Dutch black hole, it is treated on the IMF. The expression was created by the IMF itself, and it is treated in a report of the IMF. And I'm sorry, you are not right.
No, it's a puzzle. I know the report. It's a puzzle because why?
It's not a puzzle. It is a reality that this black hole exists, and if there would be any sort of valuation that would explain that, this would have been tackled by the IMF that says no, there is no such an explanation. It is a black hole, and although they do not say it is because of any fiscal issues, but they certainly put away the interpretation you are doing. Regarding the American hole, there you have a lot already of studies. None of them goes to the fiscal issue. That's what I said. But that there is a black hole in the United States. Oh, come on! You have I don't know how many studies that prove that what you just said it's not true. Simple as that. It's not true. The difference between the deficits and debt has nothing to do with the valuation of the dollar. You cannot understand it, and you cannot get to this conclusion. This is something that is not being debated.
What I see of some reference.
No, I can. I mean, you will find a lot here, but you just have to Google it, and you will certainly see a lot of them. I mean, the existence of the black hole in the United States is acknowledged by a very huge variety of authors. What I said, nobody studied, was the fiscal explanation for it. So this is what I advanced as a possibility. Because the rest of it is a matter of reading. I mean, I said nothing new. It's only a matter of reading what is published already. That is very clear on the question. So you missed completely the point when you spoke about the expansionary monetary policy and the external, the public versus external accounts.
Contraction.
You missed absolutely the point. No, because this is. Let me and thank you so much, because it shows that perhaps I was not clear on my presentation. When you have the monetary union, the big problem of the cohesion of the monetary union is the fact that you might have countries with superavits, surplus on one side,
this I agree.
and deficits on the other side. So the problem is that right now, and for a long time, since 2000, there is a completely diverse way.
No.
Germany,
I think
please let me now. Yes, but yes, please let me speak.
But you cannot give something wrong.
Can you allow me? Okay, thank you so much. So this is the reason why there might be a crisis within the euro. The monetary policy has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with the crisis. I mean, it might be expansionary, it might be recessive. Of course, it will have an impact in employment. But as long as it does not provoke any different behavior on external accounts, you will have no internal crisis. Because what we are witnessing now is an intense internal crisis, where some countries would have, if there would not be a common currency, their currency would have been devaluated very, very much, as it was in the past, and some others would be revaluated. And so, if you don't have it, you must, you have a problem. I mean, you must cope with this problem, and this problem itself has nothing to do with monetary policy. So, regarding the other issue, there you have some points. The Canadian or for instance, the Japanese constitution or the mandate as such on the monetary policy does not say black and white as the Americans say employment. The American is the only one that says employment and price stability. There you are absolutely right. But the difference is that in Japan, as you saw, or even in Canada, or even in the United Kingdom, you saw that there is the possibility of the management of the central banks to go for employment and go for stability, whereas within Europe this is not the case. And we are seeing it right now, that the Constitutional Court of Germany did not allow it. But there, from the formal point of view, I think you are right in what you said. It is fully correct what you said. But on the other points, I'm sorry, I do not think you are right.
I'm sorry. In this country, we have the habit, ladies first. This is not the case. Because you was mentioning it before. And let me just say one very, very simple thing that I agree with. I guess that one of the beauty of this discussion is to hear different opinions. It's not a question of whether I'm right or I'm wrong. And I appreciate very much the questions and the answers, but this is really the beauty of the discussion. Thank you very much. Please.
Ambassador of Finland, and I would have a question to Mr. Mancini. Thank you for showing very interesting data, and you referred several times to the resilience and say that it shows the pictures are worrisome because you don't know how long the resilience will actually last. So how do you see, based on this data, how do you see the future, the next steps? What kind of data are you going to show us, like in 5 years' time, concerning
it's always easier to explain things which happened in the past. Coming from Finland, I would say that probably what we will see is a further divergence in Europe instead of convergence. And I don't really know, the reason I'm saying this because what we were looking from the very beginning, from 2007, it's not in this data, but there was really very different reactions within the societies on those where you had a much higher level of, I don't know how to say, integrated societies in a sense, where differences were smaller, where there were much more reliance on trust in institutions. Even if people are, even in Finland, despite the Transparency International rankings, if you ask Finns, they see corruptions in business, they have their doubts about the cleanness of the government, but in a very basic level they still trust that the system will work. And what we see that there is a kind of systematic decline, or a decline of people are becoming more individualistic or family-oriented instead of system level trust. And I think what Paulo is arguing is that some of the objective realities which are confronting sovereignty with a economic space where if you want to have a euro, you have to have an economic policy coordination. If you have to have an economic policy coordination, you like it or not, you have to give up sovereignty in exchange for the goodies what you get. There is no other way around. At least that's what we have learned so far. And yes, there will be in the Nordic countries also movements for identity or in a lot of countries in the Nordic countries, they always had higher trust level in their own national government than in Brussels, Finland included, or Austria or Sweden. In the south, it was very typical to have a much higher level in Brussels than in their own national governments. Italy is a prime example, but Spain, Greece, and so forth. So they really, the institutions were not so strongly built into the imaginary of the society as strongly they had in the other countries. And that, I think this is really creates the resilience problem there. People would have to digest what Paulo was just passionately saying. How come they tell us what to do? Okay, but if you want to have a backstop, if you want to have certain structural arrangements, then it will be much harder to sell to the educated, change the trust culture, which needs for solidarity in Europe. Maybe not clear enough, but what I'm saying that you have differences between the mechanism which creates a European solidarity system, which is beyond the common market mentality, which is a shared culture. Economy is based on culture at the end of the day. And that common culture is not there because we were always thinking in a very Marxist terms. Let's do the base first and the superstructure will follow. And we have to learn that no, probably it's the other way around. If you have a common shared value system which says this is good, this is bad, this is how we do things here, I can trust that he will behave the same way as I expect him to behave, then you can have a governance, common governance. It's getting too diverse. It might be that you will have a core number of Eurozone and the rest, where you would have a new institutional framework where the Germans would negotiate one by contracts. You see already the instruments are coming out, which is a special context. If you do this, I will give you the money. But that is a bilateral or trilateral type of things. At that point, it's very hard to see if where it would lead in 5 years. This is why I'm saying that I'm not good.
Question? Yes. My name is Jorge Bertram. I'm an American. I've been living here in Portugal for 17 years. Before that, I was in Argentina, which I studied the hyperinflation environment and the Gallup war. Two questions here I have regarding the euro and the effect it had on the mark. Obviously, they were the ones who benefited the most to the fact that they avoided overvaluation of the currency. Therefore, they were able to export more. So I think we're missing that point there. I think that they're the biggest, for one. There. Second, apart from the U.S., please do not confuse the QE mandate with the mandate of the Federal Reserve for many years, because since Volcker, their mandate was to control inflation. Employment is only a result of the situation, political situation. And that's why you read the minutes of yesterday. It's very simple there. As long as unemployment remains over 7%, this year will be contained. So I don't think the employment in the U.S. Federal Reserve is affected. Since Walker, they always been the management of the interest rates.
Well, regarding the employment mandate, we will celebrate in a little bit more than a month the inauguration of the Fed, and I can guarantee you it's there, it's written there. And as our Italian friend was saying, it is not so clearly written there in other places like Japan and Canada. In the case of the Fed, it is equally placed the stability of prices with employment. But as you very rightly said, I mean, management at the European, at the Fed, took good notice that the problem at the moment was not price stability, was more employment, and so acted for employment. This is the basic logic of the system. This did not happen as such in the case of Europe, because it not only that, because it's not written there is no mention to employment as an objective of the monetary policy, but the interpretation that has been done up to now, especially reinforced by these treaties, these two intergovernmental treaties, and to this amendment, and to what is going on in the Constitutional Court in Karlsruhe, is that it doesn't. So one has to see what is printed in capital letters, and in the United States it's very clear, and to compare with other countries like Japan and Canada, we have to see more sophisticated analysis. But what you said just of the Argentinian currency board is very important for all of us, because one of the things that is striking in the law report that formed, that gave the principal input for the euro, is that there is not a single line on any historical precedent to the European Monetary Union. I mean, historical out of Europe. There is a lot of references to what happened in Europe, but there is not a single reference. A bit like Europe would make something that had nothing to do with what happened before in the world. And this is not the case. And this is a tremendous error, in my opinion, that we are paying very dearly. Because, for instance, the Argentinian experience would certainly be very, very much important for us to understand how the currency could be subjected to tremendous internal pressures as it is being subjected right now.
Questions? Well, there are no questions. We can finish. Thank you, Robert, Martin. Thank you, Paul, for your clear presentations, and thank you, everybody, for your presentation.